Welcome to the Hotcast. This is going to be the first episode in a brand new series we're calling Breathe In, Stress Out. And basically, we are going to be diving deep into stress management.
Yeah, you got it. And we're really focusing on practical things that you can use out there in the real world, especially at work.
Because work, let's be honest, it's like a pressure cooker, right? Deadlines and bosses, that one coworker that always seems to hit reply all to every email, it's enough to make you want to hit send on a very strongly worded resignation.
Oh, it definitely can be. It's not even just the big obvious things either. Sometimes it's just the low level, constant hum of stress that gets to you, just always being on and never switching off.
Yeah, it's death by a thousand paper cuts. But before we get to solutions, what are some of the biggest workplace stressors that you see people struggling with?
Well, deadlines are a classic. Of course, that feeling of the clock ticking down can just trigger a fight or flight response.
Totally. It's like your brain just turns into a giant flashing to-do list.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people just underestimate the impact of office politics, and difficult coworkers navigating those relationships can be so draining.
You're telling me I once had a coworker that would leave me passive-aggressive sticky notes on my desk? Can you believe that? Talk about stress.
It's amazing how much those little things can impact your mood and your productivity. And then, of course, there's workload, right? Feeling constantly overwhelmed and like you're drowning in tasks is a recipe for burnout.
Right, like you're on a treadmill that's just getting faster and faster and you can't get off.
Exactly. So how do we even start to tackle these workplace stress monsters?
Well, you mentioned fight or flight earlier. Our bodies are kind of wired to deal with those short-term threats, like running away from a saber-toothed tiger or something. But when we're constantly stressed, that whole system gets stuck in overdrive.
Right.
And that's where I think mindful breathing can really come in and just change the game.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Mindful breathing is one of the simplest and yet most powerful techniques you can use to calm your nervous system and shift out of that fight or flight mode. It's like hitting the pause button on your stress response.
Okay, so I've heard of mindful breathing, but I've always been a little skeptical, to be honest. It just seems too easy, Like how can just breathing actually make a difference?
It's understandable to be skeptical, but the fascinating thing is that mindful breathing isn't just some new age woo-woo. It has a real physiological impact. When you focus on your breath, specifically slow, deep breaths, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for calming your body down.
So it's like tricking your body into thinking the danger has passed, even though your inbox is still overflowing.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is that it's free, you can do it anywhere, and it only takes a few minutes to start feeling the effects.
All right, you've convinced me I'm willing to give it a try. Can you, walk us through a simple mindful breathing exercise?
Absolutely. So if you're listening and you're able to just find a comfortable position and close your eyes if you'd like and bring your attention to your breath. Notice the natural rhythm of your inhale and exhale.
Okay, I'm noticing my breath that's kind of shallow, to be honest.
That's totally normal. Gently start to deepen your breath. Inhale slowly through your nose, feeling your belly expand, and then exhale slowly through your mouth, feeling your belly contract.
I already feel a little more relaxed. It's amazing how focusing on your breath can just shift things.
It's like taking a mini vacation for your mind. And the more you practice, the more easily you'll be able to access that sense of calm, even when things are chaotic.
Yeah, I'm definitely adding this to my stress management toolkit. So we've got mindful breathing to calm our nervous systems. But what about that feeling of just being totally overwhelmed by our workload? Taking a deep breath is great and all, but it doesn't make my to-do list disappear,
Right, that's where time management comes in. It's not just about working harder, it's about working smarter. And one strategy that I find incredibly helpful is the Eisenhower matrix.
Okay, the Eisenhower matrix, I think I've heard of it, but remind me, what's that all about?
Well, it's named after Dwight Eisenhower, who was known for being incredibly productive. The basic idea is to divide all your tasks into 4 quadrants. So you got urgent and important. Those are things that need to be done right now, like putting out fires or meeting a critical deadline. Then there's important, but not urgent. This is where your long-term goals live, strategic planning, relationship building, things that are important for success but don't have an immediate deadline. And then we got urgent but not important. This quadrant is full of distractions and other people's priorities. Think of those last-minute requests that just totally derail your day. And finally, we got not urgent and not important. This is the time-wasting zone. Basically, social media scrolling, mindless, busy work things you could probably just eliminate altogether.
Okay, yeah, I see how this could be helpful. So instead of just reacting to whatever's the loudest, you take a step back and you consciously decide what deserves your time and energy.
Exactly. One of the biggest benefits of the Eisenhower matrix is that it reduces decision fatigue. You're not constantly trying to decide what to do next. You've already made those choices.
That's a great point. I feel like I spent half my day just trying to figure out what I should be working on next. So I've got my to-do list. I sorted it by quadrants. What do I do now?
Well, the key is the focus on the important but not urgent quadrant. These are the tasks that often get neglected, but they can have a huge impact on your long-term success.
Right, it's so easy to get caught up in the urgent stuff and forget about what really matters down the line.
And here's where it gets interesting. When you start to prioritize the important but not urgent tasks, you'll probably find that the urgent stuff just starts to take care of itself. You're preventing problems before they happen, you're building stronger relationships, and you're creating like a more proactive, less reactive work style.
It's like a preemptive strike against stress.
Exactly. And speaking of preemptive strikes, one of the best things you can do for stress management is to get really good at setting boundaries.
Boundaries? Oh yes, this is a big one for me. I'm a recovering people pleaser, and I used to say yes to everything even when I was already feeling swamped.
I think so many people struggle with that, especially in today's always-on work culture.
It's like this unspoken expectation that you should always be available, always go the extra mile, but you can't be everything to everyone, and you'll burn out if you try.
Absolutely. And that's why setting boundaries is so important. It's about protecting your time, your energy, and like your sanity.
Yeah. Easier said than done, though, right? Like, how do you actually say no to someone, especially when it's your boss or a client?
It definitely takes practice. There are a few things to keep in mind. First, remember that saying no is not selfish. It's an act of self-care. Second, be really clear and direct in your communication. Don't beat around the bush or make excuses. And finally, offer alternatives whenever possible.
Okay, can you give us an example? Like, let's say my boss just dumps a last-minute project on me right when I'm about to leave for the day.
Okay, so in that situation, instead of just gritting your teeth and saying yes, you could say something like, I understand that this is important, but I'm already committed to other priorities right now. If I take this on, something else will have to slip. Can we discuss which tasks we can reprioritize to make this new deadline work?
Ooh, I like that. It's assertive, but it's respectful. It shows that you're a team player and that you're willing to find solutions.
Exactly.
This is great stuff. We've got mindful breathing for calming our nerves, the Eisenhower matrix to prioritize our tasks, and boundary setting to protect our time and energy. Before we jump into more stress-busting strategies, I want to remind everyone to check out the Hotcast YouTube channel. We've got videos on everything from productivity hacks to mindfulness tips, so make sure you subscribe and join our community.
Right, we're so glad you're tuning into the Hotcast. Remember, managing stress is an ongoing journey. It's not like you reach a destination. There'll be ups and downs. But by developing these skills and using them in your daily life, you're building a foundation for greater resilience and well-being.
That's so true. Okay, let's get back to our stress management toolbox. What other techniques can we use to navigate work relationships and stay sane in all the workplace chaos?
It's funny, we often think about work stress as being caused by all these external factors like deadlines or tough bosses.
Right, like it's happening to us.
Exactly. But it's so interesting that a lot of our stress comes from like our own internal dialogue, our thoughts and beliefs about those situations.
Oh, so you're saying that it's not the situation itself, it's how we're interpreting it.
Precisely. And that's where I think mindfulness comes in again. It's not just about the breathing, it's about cultivating a greater awareness of your thoughts, feelings, even like bodily sensations.
Okay, how does that help with managing stress?
Well, when you actually start paying attention to your thoughts, you realize that a lot of them are just stories we tell ourselves. Stories about what might happen, what other people are thinking, what we should be doing.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. I am the queen of what-if thinking. My brain loves to just spin out worst-case scenarios.
Totally normal. Our brains are hardwired to scan for those threats, even if the threat is an imaginary deadline or some critical email that hasn't even been sent yet.
Right, like it's trying to protect me, but it's doing a terrible job of it.
Exactly. But here's the thing. We don't have to believe every single thought that pops into our heads. Through mindfulness, we can learn to observe those thoughts without judgment. Just notice them as they come and go, like clouds on the sky.
So instead of getting caught up in the storm of my own thoughts, I can just watch it from a distance.
Exactly. And that creates space, a separation between you and those thoughts, which can be so freeing.
I love that analogy. It's like I'm the sky and my thoughts are just like weather patterns moving through.
Yeah, and when you're not so caught up in your thoughts, you're less reactive. You can make better choices from a place of calm, and you're less likely to let stress just take over your day.
Okay, that makes so much sense. The hard part, at least for me, is actually doing the mindfulness practices. Where do you even start?
That's a great question. The good news is there are so many different ways to practice mindfulness. Meditation is one way, but it's not the only way.
Right. I think people get intimidated by meditation, like they have to sit on a cushion for an hour and clear their minds.
And that's just not realistic for most people, especially with a busy schedule.
So what are some other ways to bring mindfulness into our lives?
One simple practice is to just pay attention to your senses throughout the day. Notice the sights, the sounds, smells, tastes, even the textures around you.
So like really savoring that first cup of coffee in the morning.
Exactly. Or paying attention to the feeling of the sun on your skin or the sound of the birds.
I realize I do that sometimes without even thinking about it. Like when I'm walking my dog in the park, I'll stop and listen to the leaves rustling in the trees.
And in those moments, you're present, you're connected to your senses, you're not lost in all those thoughts.
It's like a mini meditation in the middle of my day. And I love that it's something I can do anywhere, anytime.
Exactly. You don't need any special equipment or a fancy cushion. Just bring your attention to the present moment.
I'm going to try that. So we've talked about mindfulness for our minds and bodies, and we've got those techniques, mindful breathing, paying attention to our senses. But what about when we're feeling totally overwhelmed by our emotions? Like when stress turns into anxiety, frustration, even anger.
That's such an important point because sometimes we need to do more than just manage our stress. We have to process those emotions and release them.
Right? It's like we try to shove it all down in a box, but that box is going to overflow eventually.
And that's when those emotions come out in unhealthy ways, like lashing out at coworkers, withdrawing from people, maybe even doing some self-destructive things.
So how do we deal with those big, messy emotions in a healthy way?
One of the most powerful things we can do is just allow ourselves to actually feel those emotions, acknowledge them, name them, and just give yourself permission to experience them.
Okay, I'm not going to lie, that sounds kind of scary. I'm way more comfortable just ignoring my feelings and hoping they'll magically go away.
I get it. It's tempting to avoid uncomfortable feeling, but emotions are like waves. They're going to come and go whether we like it or not, and resisting them only gives them more power.
Oh, so you're saying ride the wave, not fight it.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean you have to wallow in your emotions or let them take control. It just means acknowledging them, being kind to yourself, and letting yourself move through them.
So how do you actually do that? Like if I'm super anxious about giving a presentation, do I just sit there and let the anxiety eat me alive?
No, not at all. There are a lot of healthy ways to process those emotions. One technique that I really like is journaling. Writing down your thoughts and feelings can be so cathartic.
I've tried journaling before, but I always feel like I'm doing it wrong. Like, is there a certain way I should be doing it?
There's no right or wrong way. The important thing is to just let your thoughts and feelings out on the page. Don't censor yourself.
Okay, good to know, because I am the queen of self-editing, even in my own journal.
And another great way to process emotions is through movement. Go for a run, dance it out, do some yoga, whatever feels good. Physical activity can really help release those feelings.
Oh, I totally get that. When I'm stressed or frustrated, a good workout is the best therapy.
It's like you're moving that energy through your body.
Yeah. And sometimes just talking to someone you trust, a friend, family member, or even a therapist, can make all the difference.
Human connection is so important, especially when you're struggling. Sharing your burdens with others can make you feel less alone and more supported.
This is all such great advice. Before we dive into even more stress-busting techniques, I just want to remind everyone to check out the Hotcast YouTube channel. We've got tons of videos on everything from meditation and yoga to healthy recipes and DIY spot treatments. So be sure to subscribe and join our awesome community. We're all in this together. We've talked about some really great strategies for managing stress, in the moment. Things like mindful breathing and reframing our thoughts and processing those big emotions.
Yeah, those are all super valuable tools to have.
Totally. But I think it's important to remember that sometimes stress isn't just a temporary thing. It could be chronic.
Right. It's like that low-level hum talked about earlier. When it's constant, it starts to really affect our physical and mental health.
Yeah, it's a slow burn that eventually takes its toll.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to address the root causes of that chronic stress and make some lifestyle changes that can support our well-being.
So where do we even begin? Like, what are some of the key areas we should focus on?
Well, I think one of the most fundamental things is sleep.
Sleep music to my ears. I'm a huge believer in a good night's sleep.
And for good reason. When we don't get enough sleep, if our bodies and our minds are way more susceptible to stress. It's like trying to run a marathon on an empty tank.
Ugh, I know I get so irritable and just reactive when I'm exhausted. It's like I'm primed for an emotional meltdown.
Exactly. So try to get 7 or 8 hours of good quality sleep every night. Make it a non-negotiable, just like brushing your teeth or having breakfast.
Okay, what about nutrition? Does what we eat really make a difference in how we handle stress?
Absolutely. Giving our bodies whole, unprocessed foods is like giving our stress management systems a serious upgrade.
So it's not just about cutting out the bad stuff, like processed food, sugary drinks, too much caffeine.
Right. It's also about putting in those stress-busting foods.
Like what? Spill the beans?
Well, things that are high in magnesium are known for their calming effects, like dark leafy greens, almonds, avocados, dark chocolate.
I am so on board with this plan.
And don't forget omega-3 fatty acids. You can get those from fatty fish like salmon and tuna. They can actually reduce anxiety and boost your mood.
Brain food, yes. What about those times when you're feeling totally wiped out and you just need a quick energy boost? Is there anything we can eat to avoid that afternoon slump?
Instead of reaching for more coffee or a sugary snack, try complex carbs like a piece of fruit with some nut butter or some whole grain crackers.
That's a good tip. It's like giving your brain a slow and steady energy release instead of that spike and crash.
Exactly. And since we're talking about energy, we can't forget about exercise.
Right. It's not just about looking good, it's about feeling good.
And there's tons of research that shows regular physical activity can reduce stress, anxiety, even depression.
It's like a magic pill, but without the side effects.
And you don't have to do anything crazy intense or time-consuming. Even a 30-minute walk a few times a week can make a difference.
I love that. It's all about finding something that feels good and something you can stick with.
Exactly. So if it's dancing, swimming, hiking, even just taking the stairs instead of the elevator, find something you enjoy and do it regularly.
So we've got sleep, nutrition, and exercise as our foundation for a stress-resistant lifestyle. What else can we add to that?
I think it's super important to have some healthy coping mechanisms for those inevitable terms when stress does pop up.
Right, because life happens, right? No matter how well we're sleeping or eating or exercising.
Exactly. It's good to have some go-to strategies for those moments.
So what are some of your favorite stress-busting techniques?
One of the simplest things is to just walk away from the situation for a few minutes, take a break, go for a walk, get some fresh air, just give yourself a chance to reset.
Sometimes all you need is a change of scenery to shift your perspective.
Totally. And another great thing you can do is connect with something that brings you joy, like listening to music, being out in nature, reading a book, or just calling a friend.
Those little moments of self-care could be so powerful.
And if you're ever feeling really overwhelmed, don't hesitate to reach out for help. Talking to a therapist or a counselor can be so helpful.
Absolutely. It's a sign of strength, not weakness, to ask for support when you need it.
You got it. And remember, managing stress is an ongoing journey. There are going to be good days and bad days, but by using these strategies, you're building resilience and well-being.
So true. Well, as we wrap up this first episode of Breathe In, Stress Out, I want to remind everyone to check out the Hotcast YouTube channel for even more inspiring content and resources. We've got videos on meditation, yoga, healthy recipes, DIY spot treatments, so much good stuff. Be sure to subscribe and join our amazing community.
We are so glad that you joined us for this deep dive into stress management. Until next time, take care and keep breathing.
Thank you for listening to the Hotcast.